Good morning and welcome to the Garden and Country Extension webinar series. I'm Chris Jones. I'm with the University of Arizona, Gila County Cooperative Extension. And today we are with Timothy Trent. He's the owner and operator of the Waggin Vineyard and Estate, LLC. And he's going to be talking to us about a vineyard, his vineyard, and agritourism in Globe, Arizona. A little bit about these webinars. I present them weekly by Zoom. They are 60 minutes or less, Thursdays at 11. So if you're here, you know that well. Thank you so much. I feature a variety of horticultural and natural resource topics relevant to the environmental conditions and residential concerns of Gila County in Arizona. So if you're not from Gila County, you are very welcome to be here as long as it's of interest to you. And the recordings for these webinars are posted at the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension YouTube channel. So you could go there. As a matter of fact, I've got everything up to date right now. Got my Garden and Country webinar webpage all up to date. I've got those YouTube channels up to date. So good time to check out what's going on. And I want to let you know that the University of Arizona is an equal opportunity affirmative action institution. And so at this time, I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to open up the poll here and just ask you to respond to my affirmative action poll as far as what your age is, the gender you identify with, and ethnic group you identify with. So I'm going to leave that up for just a minute or two. Put that in the background again, get back into my slides and take that down. That's completely anonymous. I'm not going to share it afterwards, and just something I have to report on. Here is our agenda for today. Thank you for those of you who joined early for the lag time and lag in. I mean, the lag time and login. Again, my name is Chris Jones. I'm your moderator. And today we are talking about the Waggin Vineyard and Estate, LLC, a vineyard and agritourism in Globe, Arizona with Timothy Trent. He's got about a half-hour PowerPoint presentation and discussion to share with us. After that, we'll start a little chat box discussion with Tim, and we'll finish up by noon. Here is our presenter, Timothy Trent, owner and operator of the Waggin Vineyard and Estate, LLC in Globe, Arizona. And so welcome, Tim. Thank you so much for being with us here. Who've you got there in your lap?
I got Sancho, this is the mascot, of course, you know. I just woke him up from a nap, so I just wanted to introduce him to everyone, and then, you know, he can go back to sleeping, so.
That's probably his best job is sleeping, isn't it?
Yes. He enjoys that a lot, so.
Well, I'm excited to hear what you've got to share, so go ahead and throw up your slides, and we'll jump right into it.
Well, thank you, and I want to welcome everyone. I want to welcome you to the worldwide headquarters of Waggin Vineyard Estate, located here in Globe, Arizona, 1540 South Street, and today is 84 and with slight breeze. So I'm going to start with, you know, we have a motto here, and it's our dog Sancho says, "Our wine will make your tail wag." So anyway, with that in mind, I'm going to go to my overview and just share with you kind of what we're going to talk about today. And I have a lot of slides, a lot of pictures, very little text. So I'm going to kind of do a lot of talking, and I'll try to move at a reasonable pace. So the overview, the first thing we're going to talk about the dream and the vision, kind of how this all started, how the inception of the vineyard came about, and I have some pictures that are going to be before and after, and talk about some of the challenges and some of the opportunities and the fun things that went on here throughout this 8-year project. And then also planting and growing, and there's different phases there, and we're going to take you from the planting through the growing, through the harvest, through the pruning, and the processing, kind of the whole cycle. And I would just say it up front right now, one of the best things to do if you're ever going to embark on a project such as a vineyard, no matter what size, it would always be good to experience the rhythm and the cycle of a vineyard for an entire year. Then we're going to talk about wine tasting, but really we're just going to talk about the wines, the grapes, the construction of the tasting room. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about my petting zoo. This is where the agritourism comes into play with the city and how helpful they've been in helping us move this forward. And then also products, but again, this is more about the vineyard and kind of the things that go on in the vineyard, the things that it takes. And I'm going to just say up front, this is a pretty capital intensive program. So, and it's also a very labor intensive program. And then we're going to open up the questions and answers for all of you in the end. And hopefully I'll be able to answer these questions that you have in an articulate way. Thank you. And again, Chris, thanks for allowing me to be here. We're going to talk about the dream and the vision. And this is just a picture of, basically it was last year, taking a picture of the vineyard through a wall that we have built. And you can see that this is the Merlot, and on the hillside is the Chardonnay. And what I would tell you, in 2012, we started this project with 200 vines. And it was kind of starting it with, well, will vines grow here? How will they do in Globe? What are the challenges? And the way this really started is my wife's mother, my wife Daisy, her mother was a French immigrant. She's passed now. And so we'd been to France, and the families have small vineyards. And I think I had just gone into retirement, and this is one of the things that we kind of thought would be a good project. And of course, you know, it's like acquiring the land, purchasing the land, acquiring it. That's also an important aspect. But it was really her vision, and I'm kind of the person that just executed her vision. So in 13, we put 2,300 vines in, and that's really when we decided that we were in the wine business. We were moving the project to another level. And then in 15, which is through this window, you can see the hillside that is terraced. That was the 15 project that we put in 500 Chardonnay, because we had no white. We had a Cabernet Sauvignon, we had a Merlot, we had a Zinfandel, and we had a Shiraz. So we needed a white to kind of help complement our wine gallery. Anyway. Now this is basically 2011, purchasing the land. And I want you to, this is directly behind my home, our home. And if you look into the distance, this is where the lower vineyard is now. And there are going to be pictures of that. So all that was undeveloped, as well as behind the home. So that's what you do. You start with the, you assess it. Can we develop, can we build on it? And can we develop it? Can we grow grapes on it? Is water available? And we use city water irrigation because we do not have a well, and every plant has an emitter. So this is kind of what we did. We excavated the property, we terraced the hillside, and then we put the trellis system in, we put the irrigation system in, and then we planted the vines. So this is a picture. This is the first 200 vines that we actually put in. So it was a little easier with hand machinery and myself and one other person. And that's where it started, as kind of like even almost like a hobby. And then it grew and grew and grew, so to speak. So this is just the first 200 vines up directly behind our home. And then this is actually the trellis system stretched, the irrigation is in, and you can see the vines are planted. And this is this is actually January of 2012 is when this all took place. So 200 vines. And I would say that all of our vines are bare root. We don't have anything that's grafted. It's all bare root, purchased out of California through our local nursery here in Globe. And then this picture I'm sharing with you now is basically, I went directly across from my home and took this picture, and you can see these are the 200 vines, but also where the arrow is, this is river rock that is laid in by hand, and the black area is an 8-ounce non-woven fabric. And this is all done for erosion control, because as you know, you all have them where you're at is a monsoon, and a monsoon can be somewhat violent at times and erosive at times. So this is why we use this technique, and actually it adds a little more aesthetics to the vineyard. Now, this is that same shot, but this is a year later. This is 2013, when we have the trellis system erected for the entire upper vineyard, which is where we grow the Shiraz and the Zinfandel. And the area to the right, we kind of consider it a checkerboard. It is in a little different direction, but this is the Shiraz. And then on the terraced hillsides, the third, fourth, fifth terrace, that is Shiraz as well. And so the area that you see where there's no growth, that is actually, it's all rock. It's all rock, it's too hard to grow on, so we just left it barren. And now we have a 20-gallon cistern in that, above that we just capture water. We don't use it on the vines, we just capture the water to slow it down during monsoon season. And the next slide, this is the lower vineyard. This is the Cabernet area right here, but in 13, we put this area in, and then up on the top of the hill, you can see that we put more vines in. That's the Merlot. So we have about 550 Merlot vines and about 1,000 Cabernet. And then this is just coming back. This is the upper vineyard. And then you can see the rock laid in by hand. And I wanted to kind of show you that. But this is also, this is a Shiraz. And this, I might just say now that when I talked about it being labor intensive, this is a project that took many hands, and it's between both properties. There's 500 tons of river rock laid in by hand, trucked in and laid in by hand. And of course, this is just part of the growing. And we did some different things within the vineyard. You can see the columns. So this is an entryway into the vineyard, and part of it is for aesthetics for the vineyard, but also it's for, we have a pretty strong growing program because we are in the wine business and producing wine and bottling wine. And then the last picture is an overview from the back behind on the deck of our house. This is just an overview of the vineyard. And it's actually quite exciting when you put the first vine in, and then they push their first buds, and you start to see it actually come to fruition. It actually starts to happen. It's pretty amazing, the work that you put in and the fact that you can actually get something to grow. And right here, I would tell you, is the elevation is about 3,700 square feet. I mean, not square feet, 3,700 feet in elevation where the vineyard is at. And it's kind of, we have in Globe, and people will say, well, why are your grapes successful? We have a nice swing in weather every day. So we're pretty warm during the day in the summer, and we cool down at night. In the winter, we're very cold. I say very cold. We're about 20 at night in December and January. And then we get a nice 60, 65, 70 during the day, depending on the time of year. And we do get about 17 inches of moisture a year. I mean, last year could have been an exception because everyone kind of struggled with the not getting enough moisture, but we do get plenty of moisture, but it still requires us to irrigate and provide that water for the vines. And then the next picture is this is my wife Daisy with Sancho and I. We had with a little ceremony in the vineyard. And then, of course, you already met Sancho. He's the mascot. And I might tell you that he has in a lot of the stuff, he has a Spartan outfit on. Well, the way that came about was when you're working in the vineyard in the summer, one of the guys stood up and said, this is like Spartan work. So that's how he got his little costume. And now we're going to move on to planting and growing. I already talked about this a little bit, and I showed you this slide, but I thought it was important to show you it again because it's a transformation that happens over time that is just kind of one of those things that you really have to take the time to look and reflect and say, wow, that actually looks pretty good. It's pretty amazing. And people will say, well, how did you do it? Or how did you guys manage it? And sometimes, I'll be quite honest with you, it was just drawing it up in the dirt and then executing it. So, I mean, literally drawing it in the dirt, saying we need to have this distance here to here, and then erecting the trellis system and then planting the vines. And what happens with the vines, they come in, they're dormant. So you kind of trim them up and prune them up before you plant them. And then they're more manageable. And then they usually push their buds at about the end of March. And Cabernet usually goes into April. So you start learning all this about, you know, all these vines and everything you're doing in your vineyard. Some of it as you go along, it's a learn by doing. And my wife once asked me, if you know, knowing what you know now, would you do it again? And I said, I'd have to reflect long and hard on that, because it's you know, it's a pretty interesting and challenging project. So this here is the one picture on my left. That's the planting of the Cabernet and the Merlot. And that was in February and early March of 2013. That's, as I said earlier in my first slide, this is when we decided that we were going to be in the wine business and keep going and eventually build a building and then produce our wine and label it and sell it. So this is someone planting. Actually, this is my wife's brother. We had a big planting party in February of 2013 to kind of launch and get going. Had a blessing in the vineyard. We had a number of family and friends help us plant that year. And this is actually a Shiraz vine being planted in the ground. And I will say, as far as growing, one thing that we did do in most of the areas that we could, I took a backhoe and I dug down 3 feet, turned the soil up, and then we ran it through a rock screen to 2-inch rock, and then we put it back in with amendments and fertilizers. And I will take a little side note here. One thing we did do is we did take the Master Gardener class from Chris up here in Globe, which helped us a lot to learn about the soil and fertilizers. And you meet people that have knowledge in various areas. And so that was extremely helpful to us as we were embarking on this project in 2012. Now, this is something that takes place in the winter. Usually December, we have a hard freeze and the vines start to lose their leaves. And this is the first year you're growing. There's a lot of alarm in the community and your neighbors about your plants dying. And this is just a normal process of the cycle with the vines. They lose all their leaves. You can see, look like sticks. This picture on my right, it was actually this year, we had a very nice snow in February. And this was I think a Tuesday morning in February, we had this snow. And so, and one thing to note too is that, you know, we're talking about growing a little bit. This is when the root system grows the most, is in the winter. And so when you get moisture in the winter, and that's why you're also, and we're going to talk about a little bit, when you fertilize, it's when you want to fertilize a lot, is post-harvest fertilization, which is usually October, early November. So, and if, you know, I talked about us getting 17 inches of water, that's nice, but your vines need fertilizer and water and amendments. Now the pruning process, this is actually the vines. You're actually cutting about 80%, maybe 85% of the vine back. And then you can actually see some of the little buds coming out on this one. And this is a Merlot vine. And this usually happens in January. We cut the vines back, usually to 3 to 4 nodes. And when I say node, just think about your finger. Each knuckle is a node. We cut back about 4. And then we make some adjustments with some of the vines by stretching them and pulling further on the wires. One thing that we did when we planted is we planted our vines a lot closer because we had more compact space. So we only put our vines 3 feet apart versus say 5 or 6. And our rows are only 4 feet apart or 5 feet apart. And we run no machinery. We have no machinery other than a blower, a weed eater, and we have a side-by-side. Everything's walked and done by hand, backpack sprayers, pruners. So it's all, it's basically pretty much manually done all the time. And then another cycle, some of that happens after they come out of dormancy in the spring, like March. Then there's what's called fruit set. And I didn't have a good picture for you, but normally what happens is you can start to see these clusters. They're very, very tiny. And then they shatter in May. So they look like little stars that shatter and it's flowering on the vine. Then what happens is after fruit sets, that's when fruit set happens. And that's when you can see what your clusters are going to look like and what your fruit's going to look like. But what we do is we normally don't do much trimming of any kind until after fruit sets because the vines are pretty sensitive. And when the fruit is setting, if you disturb the vines too much, you actually disturb the fruit that you potentially could have on your vines. Now, this is just a picture of one of the vines that's starting to grow. And this is probably in June sometime, because what we do is we start trimming the vines back on the sides. We push some of it in the wire. We trim the tops, because one thing that we do here is, which is very important, and we have learned the hard way. The first year in 2015 for our first harvest, we did nothing to protect our vines. And the birds and the bees and insects, well, first the birds destroy the fruit, then the insects come, and then they destroy it further, and that leads to potential disease and other catastrophic things in your vineyard. So the first year we did nothing, we learned the hard way. Then the second year, in 2016, we put a bird distress system in. And what it did is it squawked and squealed, and it's birds that are indigenous to your area, and it's a little computer with speakers. Well, frankly, the only thing it bothered were the neighbors, because it goes from dusk to dawn. So as your day is longer, it squawks all day long. And of course, we're in the city limits here. So there are fewer things that you can do within the city limits. So finally, in 2017, we went to bird netting, and you can see the bird netting on some of the vines that we apply. And what we do is we pull it over and then clip it. And honestly, this is really the best way to protect your crop. It's more labor intensive. It takes longer to put on, but it saves probably 20% more of your crop than you would normally. And honestly, it saves most of it because the birds, they really have a difficult time getting in. And then if they get in, they have a difficult time getting out. So it's helped us quite a bit. So we've been doing that since 2017. But again, that was one of those we learned by trial. We learned the hard way. And then in February, one area I didn't really talk about, but when we come out of dormancy, we prune in January. February is when we repair the trellis system. There are physical repairs that need to be done. And then you're pretty much on your way into the spring, and we fertilize again in the spring. And we're going to get into that here in just a little bit. And we usually get our soil tested every 2 years. And that's kind of a roadmap to help you kind of figure out what else you need to do that maybe you're not doing in your vineyard. And now we have a harvest. Harvest is another cycle. It's usually happens in the summer. We have 3 harvests here at Waggin Vineyard and Estate. The first harvest is early August. It is our Chardonnay. It's our white, the only white we have. And it's on the hillside. And we harvest that usually first, second week in August. Then our Merlot, our Zinfandel, and our our Shiraz, all harvest usually the last week or the last week of August, the first week of September. Then the last harvest we have is our Cabernet. The Cabernet hangs for a long time, and usually it's the last week in September or the first week in October. Now, I will tell you one thing in Arizona, the climate is pretty conducive to your grape, so your fruit can hang a long time. But what we do at harvest, we test when we think we're 2-3 weeks out. There's two things that we do that are pretty important. One is we start to turn the water back a little bit. We put the vines in a little deprivation, not a lot, just a little bit. And it helps push the sugar to the fruit. Now, one thing that's important is we test for the Brix. It's called BRIX. Brix is the sugar level in your fruit. Now, I will tell you, we always have goals for fruit or for sugar levels in our fruit, like our Zinfandel and our Shiraz and our Merlot. It's usually around 23 to 24. Our Chardonnay is 22. And our Cabernet hopefully is 25, 26, but sometimes you may not get there, because what you also have to be cautious about is you have to test for the acid or the pH in your grape as well, because you may not ever get to your number of 24 because your Brix number 24, because your pH is rising in your grape, in your vineyard, and that leads to problems during fermentation. So it's important to measure both of those measures when you are checking your fruit before harvest. And usually now we have a pretty good idea after what, 5 years of harvesting, when things are going, when your fruit is coming ready to harvest and things, and those types of things. You kind of get a better benchmark for that. Okay, now on to fertilizer. This might be out of place a little bit, but just to tell you what we do with fertilizer after we harvest. And you're saying, what is this a picture of? Well, this is a picture of chicken manure. We use a dehydrated chicken manure from a chicken farm on the west side of town. And we usually apply this 2 or 3 times a year, but also we do a sulfur, which helps lower the acidity in your soil, the alkaline acidity. We use a gypsum. Those are in the soils. And what we do is we do subsurface. So we throw it, we put it down, we scratch it in, then we begin the watering process. And then, you always are hopeful for a lot of rains in the winter to help push all that down into the ground. But we do this several times a year. And then, like I said, we don't really have machinery to do that. So the process is a wheelbarrow and a shovel and a couple scrapers, things that scratch the fertilizers in. Then we also do foliar sprays, which a foliar spray is something you spray directly on the vines, and that the vines take those up much quicker. And one of the things that we do, we use a boron. It's basically borax that we dilute, and that helps with fruit set in the spring, when like we're talking about the fruit setting and preparation for the fruit to come on. So those are things that we do throughout the year and through the cycle. And basically what happens is after harvest, there's a couple of months where the vines are just, I say they're resting, they're getting ready to go into dormancy. And then there isn't a lot of things that you're doing at that time to the vines, other than you make sure that you have fertilized properly and that your water system works well. Okay, the next thing is production. This is where you harvest. You take your fruit, you take it. What we do is we have another vineyard that we work with under a crush contract to make our wines for us. And part of that is we don't have a production site here. And this is all a learning process. And what you find out in the wine industry is you can purchase any part of any process. that you really want. I mean, if we wanted to bring people into harvest, we could do that. So this is a part of it that we purchased from another vineyard. My wife is a winemaker as well, and she kind of works with them on what styles we want in the wine. And we primarily have red blends and then our Chardonnay. So this is Mike, the vineyard manager here, at the end of the line, the bottling. And what you also realize is the reds take 2 full years before they're ready to drink and retail. And so we bottle the reds about 6 to 4 months away from their 2-year date. And then like we had a 2015 red, which is our first red, because we did not open the tasting room until 2020. So we harvested in 15, we bottled in 17. We didn't sell it until 2020. So it's a nice blend, stay in the bottle, and because it does age in the bottle over time. And then on the right, you can see the barrels. I will be honest with you, this is one of the process, this is part of the operation that probably is the most expensive. Cooperage, making your wine and storing it is usually about 20% of your operation. So it's something, we purchased the barrels. This is American oak. So it's, and basically the folks that we work with have guided us in what the best barrels are to purchase. So this is the end of the line process, so to speak, after all of the harvesting, the watering, the fertilizers, the pruning, fruit set. This is it. This is where it all happens in the bottle. So, and then the wine tasting. And what I'm going to talk about here a little bit is this is our tasting room. Now, what you realize is that we kind of took a longer way around getting here, is that we started a vineyard. We put the whole vineyard in, installed all 3,000 vines. And then we started harvesting and then producing. And it wasn't until we built this structure in 2019, took us the entire year because of ground preparation and land development. And this is a part of the building under construction on the left, the top left, then the right picture on the right. This is kind of, you can see we have garage doors. You can see it's like most of the building is complete on the outside. We're putting the patio cover on. And then on my left, this is the pavers. We have about a 3,500 square foot patio. The building itself is about 1,500 square feet. And we have within that building, we have about a 900 square foot tasting room. We have men's and women's restrooms in that building. We have a small kitchen, and we have wine storage. And this is a picture of the building in the evening. I say building the building. I was the contractor, the superintendent, and I managed the budget, and I told people it was like a turbulent airplane ride to a beautiful vacation. So this has been like something we've been working on for a long time. But this is your retail center. You have to have this to get your federal liquor license and to move forward. And of course, these are just our bottles that are labeled. So this is the finished product from all the work. Go back to the first slide where the barren land, to putting the vines in, to following the rhythm and the cycle of the vineyard. This is the finished product into the line. And this is the inside of the tasting room. And this is just a picture. My dog Sancho says, "Our wine will make your tail wag." Okay, and one more thing I want to talk about is our petting zoo. This is agritourism. This is part of something that the city really was very instrumental and helpful in us getting this off the ground. It started with pygmy goats. I had a couple pygmy goats, and I enjoyed the goats, and so I had a little goat pen. We had a little goat pen. And then it expanded to we decided to get a miniature donkey. Well, then we ended up adding 2 miniature donkeys. We had 3 miniature donkeys and a miniature horse. And then we didn't stop. We said, well, let's get some alpacas. So we have 3 alpacas. So that's what we have in our wagon train zoo now. And part of the agritourism, we went to the city for we had to go to planning and zoning for a permit. Then they had to approve that permit. Then it went to the city for a conditional use permit. And then they came out and oversaw the plans and made sure everything was in alignment. Here is that February snow I was talking about. This is the arena with the pens. And then we have a metal container that is where all the tack and feed is at. But here's another picture of the arena with and really what we do is we clean the pens and we store the manure up on the other property. And at some point we'll use that within the vineyard on some vines, and then also on other plants. We have about 100 rose bushes that grow on the property. So we will use all that stuff eventually as it gets a little safer to use. Here's a picture of the donkeys and the horse within their pens, and here they are in the arena. And I will tell you, my wife named them all. And so this first one here, this is John McClane. They're all named after action heroes, okay? All the donkeys and the horse. The next one, the black one, this is Jack Reacher. And then this is Maximus Aurelius. He's 1 year old. He's my baby. And then the horse that looks like he's not moving or not well, he's fine. That's Blondie Eastwood, from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And then we have 3 alpacas. They're pretty docile, pretty interesting animals. And they just got sheared not too long ago. But this is Gilligan. And then this is Marianne. This is Ginger. And then in the back is Marianne. And then my 2 goats, pygmy goats, with Sancho. The black one is Denny, and the white one is Milkshake. But this is also something that patrons can come and see when they're here. But also, they're like my pets, our pets. So we enjoy them. Okay, we're going to go into. I think I'll turn over to Chris a little bit, but I wanted to tell you that we're pretty active on social media. So if you want to know any more about Vineyard, you can go to Waggin, www.wagginvineyard.com. You see it right here. And also we're on Facebook and Instagram, as well as we have other events here. And that's kind of, I'll open up, Chris. I'll turn to you. Okay, thank you.
Very good. I am thoroughly impressed, Tim. What a journey. And I was looking forward to having you on to share this. So it has been a lot of fun learning what you've been through to do this. I'm sure it wasn't all fun.
Yeah.
And I've got Don with a hand up here. And some people do that on accident, and sometimes they want to talk. Do you know Don here? Should I let Don in to ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. Don, if you unmute, there you go.
There we go.
Okay.
What are the hours of the vineyard?
Are you talking about us as laborers, or just
No, like if I want to come up and have a glass of wine up there, what are
Okay.
the hours?
Okay, the hours are Thursday and Sunday we're open 11 to 5, and then on Friday and Saturday we're open from 11 to 9, and we have live music every Friday and Saturday. And the second Saturday of every month we have a food event.
What kind of food do you have?
Well, we have barbecue, we have pizza, we have Hawaiian. We just hire. We have vendors that come in and cook the food.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Good
question.
questions, Don. Thank you so much. Let me move. There we go. Okay. And we have a chat message from Michelle, and she says, if you were to only have room to grow one type of grape, what would be your favorite grape for eating and hobby winemaking?
I think for here, just because of our experiences, it's the Merlot. Merlot it grows the best here. And it has, and you know, it's a wine that is, it's not as robust as a Cabernet. So it's a little, a little milder, a little softer to drink, a little easier on your palate.
Good. You know, I like Merlot too. I was trying to take down Don's hand here, but I can't figure it out. So it's okay. So I've got lots of questions, and folks, please go ahead and do just like that. Put a message in the Q&A or the chat box, and I can relay that to Tom, or put your hand up and we can bring you on too. But when you got started, you had to develop all that land, and you had to do all the terracing, and you had to lay out all those rocks. And you said that you dug down deep and you took out the rocks. Did you use a tractor to kind of get that started into those layers?
I can be honest with you, I never know how to didn't know how to use a backhoe, but I had a friend who backed me up to a hillside, and he said, okay, you move the dirt from there over to there. Then when you get done, you move it from there back over to the original spot. And you just keep doing it until you are comfortable on the backhoe. So yes, and someone loaned me a huge rock screen. And just so folks know, a rock screen would be larger than a big, say a large pickup truck. It's much bigger than that. Matter of fact, they had to use a special loader to get it off of the trailer when they brought it over. But yes, that's kind of, we did that. And then we spent 2 months digging the soil, screening it, and putting it back in. And then we used the rock to build some drainage ditches on the property. So it's, it was a pretty intense project. And if you think about it, we were at it for 8 years before we really built our building. So, we put the vineyard in, and then we started doing things around the vineyard with some other structures and stuff. So
that was, like you said, really labor intensive. You learned how to use a backhoe. And that project of doing the screening, you were able to get, the desert broom, the tap roots out. Did you have a lot of weeds come in after that, or what
not really? And what you're right, like we had a lot of burrow brush, and we just dug it all out, and we dug all that stuff and cleared the property, really is what we did. And then we still have weeds and things that we deal with, but overall we were able to be pretty successful in getting rid of most everything that is invasive could be invasive in your vineyard. One thing that we do, I didn't mention that we do deal with a lot, is we deal with we have a white fly that we spray for every year. But once we spray for it, it's effectively gone. And I remember, Chris, I visited with you, and you gave me a suggestion to talk to one of your professor friends at U of A, who gave us suggestions, because we were using some different things. And that's another thing for all of you. You can use biologicals to kind of help with insects in your vineyard, but it's in a very expensive proposition, and it may not work. And then it's important, and we're too large to be, like you just use organics all the time to try to help with some of that stuff. And so you have to use something that's kind of manufactured, but those things are also manufactured to be less invasive on other insects in your vineyard. So, but the white fly is pretty rough. But once we spray, that usually takes care of it for the year.
And, so far it's been a 10-year journey. And, you know, as you learn how to learn those things, you may be able to go more biological, but you know, you do what
Yes.
you need to be successful.
Yes.
Okay, so Susan says, this was such a fun presentation. I agree. We went to Southern Arizona down to Sonoyta for a wine tasting trip. They're wine drinkers, and it would be a fun trip to taste your wine and see your hounds, place your animals and so on. And so what do you spray for your white flies is Susan's question.
It's called the Cell SG30, ASSAIL SG30. That's what we use, and it doesn't take very much to make it work. I mean, it's you need a very small amount on for even a large scale.
And as you say, you know, you're the only operation in town. So once you get it controlled, there aren't other places where they're coming from. They kind of blow in the wind. They just kind of, they're out there. They're in people's gardens, but not any big numbers around here.
Yeah.
But
and you know, things winter over in the ditches. So we do a lot of cleanup in the ditches in the winter. We burn out and do some things like that to help us a little bit.
So you do your fertilizing through mostly in the fall. You're just saying you get a lot of that fertilizing in there because that's when the roots are going to take good advantage of it. Are you having to do much during the growing season? Are you just adding water and watching what's going on?
Pretty much water. What we do is it's usually October, Chris, maybe early November. And then again, I think we put it down in February again this year. And I think that's probably about as much as we need, you know, to do. And the vines always look a little rough toward the end after harvest, because I think it's just been, you know, it's rough. It's like, it's, you know, because the weather gets really warm here, you know, we get 105, and even though it cools down a little bit at night, it's still, you know, and we water at night, and but it's still, the vines, I think we're fertilizing adequately enough and watering. It's just the sun is intense on them.
Indeed. And let's hope that we get a nice monsoon this year and take it a little bit easier on them.
Yes.
Yeah. How about your irrigation system? So you were getting that set up. I guess you planted all your
well, yes, we buried all the irrigation lines, and then we have an emitter to every plant. And usually what we do is we start out watering probably about 3 hours twice a week. Now we go up to and it's I think they're 2-gallon emitters that we use. So each plant's using probably 16, at peak in the summer gets to be about 16 gallons a week is what each plant is using, maybe 16 to 20 gallons a week.
That sounds fairly reasonable to me. You've got that down to where you're probably conserving as much water as you can, keeping them healthy.
Well, you have to go with a system that you can't, you know, you have to go with a system that helps you conserve, because, you know, we like I said, we use city water, and one of the things that we, you know, it's not, we've thought about a well, but a well, I don't think it's real practical here, because the depth might be more than we want to go, and then there may not be water. So
okay.
We have and you know, wells take up space, and then if you want to have water security, you know, like say for a day or two on your well, you have to use storage tanks, which take up a lot of space on your property. We're like a 7-acre operation, and that includes the building and the vineyard and you know, the upper property. So it's like we're pretty small operation here, and with 3,000 vines.
So okay. Nancy's got another question for us. Why aren't you using the rainwater collected in the cistern?
Well, it's a good question, Nancy. That's an awesome question, actually. And I'll be honest with you, we have been in a 3-year study with Project Harvest Group out of U of A, and they have been testing our water. and we're waiting to see if it's something that we can use, because I didn't want to use it on the vines if it wasn't safe to use. So we're kind of on the tail end of that study, and I think we'll get more and more results, which tells us that we can probably go ahead and use that. And I'll tell you, we built the cistern in the beginning, and it was really, you never control water, right? I mean, we're vertical, as you see, the vineyard is vertical on the east and the west sides. And when the monsoons come, they can be destructive. So we built this cistern to help just slow the water and maybe gently guide it in another direction. And so, but eventually we will probably utilize that water onto our vines or other plants. I can tell you the animals around the preserve like it, so they like the water when it's
And
there. So.
I appreciate your bringing up the Project Harvest program. We will actually be having the team on June 10th. Got them scheduled to give the final report on the webinar series here. So yeah, that's all ready, and really, I think we're getting good water out of the air for it, out of the sky for us. If it'll rain.
Well, and everyone knows, water that you get, that you put on your vines, nothing's as good as rainwater, because it's like, but it'd be nice if we got a little bit more, but we're pretty arid here, and we utilize what we can utilize. And then like when we have monsoon seasons, we turn probably the irrigation way back, because we get enough rains that really kind of revitalize the vines a little bit, so to speak. So
yeah, well, I see it with my own water bill at home. When the monsoons come in, I don't have to be putting water on the trees like in May and June. Yeah. Okay, so as you were saying, this is a labor and capital intensive endeavor. I can imagine you're probably still in debt or haven't seen a profit yet. Tell us a little bit about your wine club, because that's probably one of the best ways somebody might be able to support what you're up to.
Well, we have 3 levels of wine clubs here at Waggin Vineyard, and there's no membership fee. It's just if you get 3 bottles twice a year, that's 10% off, and it's 10% off of everything that you always do here at the Vineyard. So if you are a wine club member and you come to visit, then you drink and you eat at 10% off. And there's a 6-bottle wine. Well, then that's called that's called Furry Friends. Okay. And this is all on our website. So, and then the second club is Run with the Pack. And that is a 6-bottle wine club twice a year. And our releases are in April and November. And a lot of that's due to weather. We want to have good weather in case we're shipping. And then the last club is 12 bottles twice a year. And that is a Waggin Wine Club. And that's a 20% discount on everything. So, we always joke to tell people, hey, you might as well join a wine club, because then you can drink your favorite wines at a discount. So, and we do like food events. Like Don asked the question, we do food events, which are pretty popular. The live music, we have 5 or 6 different artists that play here, and on the evenings. And I'll just promote it. It's like across the street, 25 feet away, as we have a hotel with 52 rooms, and a nice hotel, and they give you a preferred rate if you stay with them and come over here. So,
oh, that's nice to know. Okay. Yeah. I just want to tell people that are here, if you haven't been to the Vineyard and their wine tasting area, it is really a lovely patio. They've got kind of a southern facing portion that looks out towards great view of the mountains of the Pinals. So nice in the winter, keep you in the warm. And then you've got the portion that's on the eastern side. So it catches that afternoon sun, and you're in the shade, and that kind of makes it nice. So typically, weather's pretty comfortable here at one time or another during the summer, or throughout the year. In the winter, we have nice afternoons, and in the summer until the monsoon comes in, or even our evenings are really nice. So come on out. And I just want to say to people, the wine tasting, I think, is an excellent value. You get to taste 6 of your wines. You get to take the glass home with you, right?
Yes, I might tell you too,
Yeah.
Chris, that just for your viewers, that, you know, we have radiant heat in the winter with fire pits as to make it more comfortable for everyone, as well as we have a mister system now to make it more comfortable to be outside if it's a little warm.
Yeah, so just going to make it a comfortable situation where you're outdoors and you can really enjoy the outdoors there. So I guess we're getting close here. We haven't had too many questions, but just really great group we've had. Thank you so much, Tim, for sharing all about it. Kay
Thanks
just
for having me,
commented.
Chris.
Oh, you're welcome. And Kay just mentioned that we have a few people coming tonight from the Graham County Chamber of Commerce, so they're excited about coming. So I just shared again in the chat box the evaluation link, that if you take a little time there, it's usually only a minute, 2 minutes max. Just if you learn something, if you're willing to share it, some ideas for the webinar, that really helps me out with my programming. So Tim, at this time, I'm going to pull up my closing slide here.
Okay.
Here's Tim. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris.
We just had our Q&A discussion. And next week, next Thursday, I am your speaker. And we're going to be talking about what we call Be Ember Aware and to protect your home from wildfire. So not too long ago, Tim, I was called by ABC 15, had a little interview, and they had me on the morning news where I talked about this publication that I have at my website. And so I'll just go into it, help people try to get ready for this year's fire season, how to keep their homes safe. And with that, I believe we're all done. Everybody, have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank